Evening, everybody. This is Nikki, for those of you who don't know who I am. So this evening, we have two wonderful people joining us from Ashley River Park, which is a relatively new park. But lots of wonderful things happening there. So Sarah will be discussing the historical evolution that has affected native plants in our habitat, and then getting much more specific into what's happening with the native pollinator garden at Ashley River Park. And then she'll talk about the planning process and how they decided what to plant and selecting the design and layout. So all wonderful things and all the steps that went along the way. And then John will be discussing the local landscape, like including the park, and how they manage to protect the habitats and restore some of the landscape's natural integrity. And then also the concepts that he discusses when he does his nature walks, and really emphasizing the community engagement and environmental education. Just to give you a little bit of background, Sarah is the park's operations specialist at Ashley River Park, and she's been working for the park for over 4 years. And then she oversees the daily operations of the park and focuses on conservation initiatives. And then also started the beginning stages of the recycling program, the pollinator garden, and really promoting environmental sustainability along with engaging the community to do that. And John has had 6 years of experience as a biotech visitor service and a park ranger at Santee in Cape Romaine, and then has been with Dorchester County Parks for almost 2 years. He's very involved with community outreach, public relations, and community festival events. And both at the Refuge and at Dorchester County Parks, he's supported a wide range of forestry activities, including trail maintenance, clearing, repair work, tours, educational activities, so much. And that he regularly leads nature walks at Ashley River and at Rosebrook and Pine Trace Park. And just about his knowledge and overall conservation of these sites. So there's lots more to them too, but without further ado, I want to turn it over to the two of them so they can get started. And I'll just thank them up front for joining us this evening. So
Perfect.
thank you, Sarah and John. Take it away.
Thank you, and thank you everybody again for coming. We really appreciate you being here. So I am just going to start off with a brief overview about the planning process of the pollinator garden here at Ashley River Park. We planted this garden in April, so just a few months ago. And I just wanted to go over the planning process and some of the things that I considered when planning out the garden. So first we had to decide on a site location. And then second, we ended up collaborating with a lot of people. And so we could not have done this project without all of the help from others. The third one is we chose the plants, of course. And then the fourth step is the soil amendment plan, which I'll get into later. And then the fifth step, we chose the design. And then we did the actual planting days and educational outreach.
And Sean needs the link.
What was that?
Where Sean needs the link.
Oh, okay. And then we added additional features as well. And then we created a volunteer program. I think it's a little too late, but I'll take it. All right, and then for choosing the site, some of the questions that I had considered was how much sun does the site have, and what will be seen but not trampled, and then also whether or not we wanted to do raised planter boxes or plant them directly in the ground. And so whenever I was looking at site locations, I had considered doing raised planter boxes, but I was told by some people that I'd reached out to that they believed that directly in the ground would be better. And I'll kind of get into more so why we chose that. And then another question was, does this site have drip irrigation? And so in the park, we have a lot of landscaped areas that are landscaped with pine straw. And so these areas all have drip irrigation. And so we wanted the site that we chose to have an irrigation system that would help with water conservation and also long-term maintenance as well. And then the other question was what space would be big enough for additional features. I wanted to choose something that would be able to accommodate, like a bench and maybe a fountain and something that could be a wildlife sanctuary for our patrons. And so the site that we ended up choosing is right here to the right. And you can see, obviously, this is a before picture. She was a little barren initially. And so that area was approximately 6,142 square feet. So pretty spacious. I was initially a little bit worried that it was too ambitious for us to plant, but also was told that it was originally designed to be a butterfly garden. So when I mentioned this to my manager, he had told me that this site was originally planned to be a butterfly garden. And so I decided that this probably made the most sense since it was already landscaped for that. And also, it is away from high foot traffic areas, so it's a lot more secluded. And I wanted to choose a site that would not get trampled as easily, but that also had like a path that allowed people to walk through and see the plants as well. So then the pine straw at this site helps to retain the moisture. So that helps in order to help with the conservation, and it also like assists with not having to like hand water it. So the drip irrigation is more sustainable for long term and is also less maintenance. So we don't need to hand water the 6,000 square foot area. And then another thing about the site is that it does get full sun. So the next step was collaboration and planning. So in order to make this project possible, I reached out to a lot of people that helped give me some information and recommendations. So the first people that I reached out to were master gardeners. Mary Balderson was actually the point of contact. I'm not sure if she's on here today, but she ended up doing a site visit and she helped kind of give me some recommendations and also validated that this site was a good site for the garden. And then she also gave me some grant information with South Carolina Native Plant Society. And so we did apply for that grant and we got awarded $1,000. So we absolutely could not have done this project without the grant. So huge shout out to Mary Balderson for sharing that information and for also donating some plants as well and helping getting that garden started. And then another huge help was Clemson Extension. So they agreed to host a native plant workshop here. And so the planting days, which I'll get into more in a second, but they were split up into 2 days. So Clemson Extension hosted a native plant workshop where they ended up inviting a lot of volunteers and made it a whole event. And they bought half of the plants from Roots and Shoots. And so before the planting day, they ended up doing a site visit where they made some recommendations for what plants we should plant, as well as tested the soil. And then Katie's Crops also planned to plant the rest of the garden after Clemson Extension. So then they ended up hosting another planting day. And then I reached out to Charlene, who is with Native Plants to the People. And she was so helpful, so informational. She gave us some native plant recommendations. She made a whole Google slide with what plants she would recommend, what pollinators they attract, and also gave me some site design suggestions because I have never designed anything in my life. So I had asked her like what she would recommend, and she gave me a few tips as well. And then also provided the other half of the plant list for the Katie's Crops planting day. So she helped curate what we were going to plant. And then the really fun part was choosing the plants. So a few of the questions that I considered when choosing what to plant was, are the plants native? And I'll get into later like how native plants are so important and why we chose the native plants that we did. Another question was, what are their specific characteristics and requirements? Some things I considered were bloom times, sun requirements. Do they need full sun, part sun? Are they perennials or annuals? And so, of course, the perennials are the ones that come back every year, and then the annuals would need to be replanted. And then, are they host or nectar plants, and what pollinators do they attract? So, of course, we wanted to plant plants that attract a wide variety of pollinators. And then another question was, are they resilient to our specific soil type? So all of the 22 plant species that we planted are native. So all native plants were chosen because they provide habitats and food for the local species, such as Gulf fritillaries, sphinx moths, and carpenter bees. And also these native plants are adapted to the environment, so they require little maintenance. So no fertilizer, no pesticides. It also conserves water because they are adapted to the environment, so they don't need as much water as other plants that are not native. And so also helps promote biodiversity. And so some of the characteristics that I considered were bloom times. We wanted to choose species that bloom at various times. And so all of the species that we planted, they bloom varies from spring to fall. And they also are all species that can handle full sun because the location that I chose gets about 6 to 8 hours of sun every day. And the majority of species we chose are perennials because we wanted something that would be able to come back each year, so we wouldn't have to buy more. Only 3 are annuals. So the perennials I thought would just be more cost effective and a reliable long-term habitat. So all the plants we planted will remain the same, but of course they will grow out eventually, but we shouldn't really need to do much long-term maintenance regarding replanting. And then we decided to plant a variety of both host and nectar plants because, of course, the host plants are what the butterflies lay their eggs on, and then the nectar plants are what they feed on. And what was that? All right. And then we also planted a lot of plants that attract a wide variety of pollinators, such as hummingbirds, moths, bees, wasps, and butterflies. And so now for the soil type, Clemson Extension ended up doing a soil test for us. And this was before we kind of really finalized what we were planting. We had an idea, but we didn't have like a super like solidified plan. And so this is the soil test results. They ended up getting the results about a week after they did the test, and they had emailed me, hey, we have the results. Do you have time for a call? And so I thought, uh-oh, probably not good. That's probably not a good sign. And as you can see here, it's not ideal. So to get into the specifics, the soil pH was 7.4, which is leaning a little more alkaline than most of the plants we chose prefer. So a lot of the plants like slightly acidic soil, which is 6 to 6.8 pH. And then the phosphorus was also very high. So this is a macronutrient, and it being way too high can block the iron and the zinc uptake. The calcium was also really high, which contributes to the higher soil pH. And the potassium was pretty low, which can cause weaker stems, poor drought tolerance, and browning of the leaves. And then the texture of the soil is very clay and poor draining. So if you were to pick up our soil, like you could literally make a ceramic pot out of it. Like it is extremely clay and extremely hard. So Clemson Extension decided to adjust the plant list based on these soil test results because a lot of the plants we initially planned on planting would not have done very well in the soil conditions. And so they also created a soil amendment plan, which I will get to in a second. So the reason why we think that the soil is the way that it is going back to the site history of it originally being developed into a neighborhood, but then it was bought out by the county and it was made to be a passive recreation urban park, which is obviously now what we operate as. And Clemson Extension thinks that the reason why the soil is so compacted and poorly draining is because construction vehicles drove over the current garden location, which caused the soil to become compacted. And so the compacted soil restricts root growth, it reduces oxygen availability, causes poor drainage, and reduces nutrient uptake. And they also think that the leftover rock and sediment cause an increase to the soil pH and calcium levels. Now, luckily, these are all conditions that could be amended. And so they suggested that we dig a wider hole than needed for the plants. So during the planting day, we dug a wider hole to help aerate the soil and also combat the issues caused by the soil compaction. And this aeration also would help prevent root rot and increase nutrient uptake and water absorption. And then we applied compost in and around the hole to improve the nutrient availability and the soil structure. And then we also applied sulfur around the plant once it was planted. And they gave us like a specific amount to apply, like per square feet, to lower the soil pH. And so now to get to the actual plants that we planted. So these are our spreader plants. So these are plants that are supposed to really take root and spread. And I wanted something that would take up a lot of space for such a big area. So the first one we chose was mountain mint. This one we chose because it attracts a wide variety of pollinators. The bees absolutely love it. I've seen bees, I've seen butterflies and wasps on the mountain mint. We also planted spotted bee balm. Now the spotted bee balm is unfortunately non-existent. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe something ate it. I'm not sure, but it has not grown at all. But we planted down the edges too, hopefully hoping that maybe it would grow and maybe it'll come back next year. And then we planted blue mist flower, which is another plant that's supposed to spread as well, and that one is doing pretty well. And then for our smaller plants, these are the ones that we planted more so towards the path. And so we've got the blue-eyed grass, which isn't blooming as of now, but it should bloom like later summer, we're hoping. And then we've got large flower coreopsis, which has started blooming. And this is one of the plants that Charlene suggested we plant about 40 of. So this is the most substantial plant in the garden right now. And then we also have Stokes Aster. This one has taken to the garden beautifully. This is the one that's probably blooming the most, and it's also planted in other areas of the park. So it must really like that like moist, hydrating soil. So it's pretty resilient. And then for our smaller to medium plants, we have Scarlet Sage, which is one of the annuals that we planted, and the hummingbirds love these. And then we also have Blue Flag Iris and Golden Canna Lily, and those two we placed next to each other because I thought that the colors just went beautifully. And we're getting a few blooms on the Golden Canna Lily. And then we also have Obedient Plant, and that's also kind of towards the front as well. And then for our host plants, we have Butterfly Milkweed and we have Partridge Pea, another annual. So I was considering doing swamp milkweed, but I did kind of hear mixed things about just milkweed in general. But the butterfly milkweed, we actually got a first bloom a few days ago. So it is taking pretty well, better than I thought. And so is the partridge pea. But I did hear that some of the host plants can be kind of finicky with growing. But so far, they've been doing pretty decent. And then these are our medium to larger plants. So these are going to be kind of towards the back area. So we've got cutleaf coneflower. The wasps absolutely love this one. Frost aster, which is my personal favorite. This one, we planted them as plugs, and they probably grew in like a month. And they clumped together to create this like beautiful flowering bush. And it is so gorgeous. We also have Elliot's aster. And then Starry Rosinweed, which came to us blooming, and it is still blooming. And then we also have Swamp Sunflower, which I chose this one for the back because apparently it can get up to like 8 to 9 feet tall. So I thought that would look really nice. And then we got some herbs from Katie's Crops. So they brought some parsley, rosemary, and dill. The dill isn't doing as well as we hoped. As soon as it got really tall, it started flopping over. So if anybody has any ideas on, I don't know if we need to cut it back or something, but those are all of the herbs. And then for the design process, the suggested layout was of course provided by Charlene, and so she helped kind of walk us through what she would recommend. And some of the questions that I'd ask myself is whether or not the plants spread significantly. So like I mentioned with those spreader plants, I wanted those to be more on the edge so they had kind of room to take over instead of overcrowding the others. Another question was how wide do the plants get? How much space do they need? How tall do they get? I wanted the taller ones in the back and then the shorter ones in the front. And then another question I asked myself was if we want the design to be more pristine and symmetrical, or if we want it to appear more natural and randomly placed. I've noticed with a lot of pollinator gardens, they usually look more random and natural and wild, and I like that look. But for more of like an urban park setting, I did want it to be a little bit symmetrical. So I wanted to kind of balance out it being symmetrical, but also still looking a little natural and a little wild. So this was the initial plan that I did through Canva, and right now it probably just looks like a bunch of letters. But here at the front is where you can see like the blue-eyed grass and the Stokes aster, and then the large flower coreopsis are in the clumps. And my idea was to just do staggered rows. So that was just the basic draft of the plan. And the actual plan looked a little like this. So it was a little similar, but the day of, I kind of just ended up adjusting things as I saw fit. So you can see that like the obedient plants and the canna lilies are towards the front in staggered rows. And then the swamp sunflower and the bigger plants are in the back to create a little bit of like a symmetrical view. And then here's for the actual planting days. So April 8th is whenever Clemson Extension hosted their native plant workshop, and they planted about 72 plants total. And this also consisted of some educational outreach. They had a presentation that they did in the beginning, and they had about 20 people that came to that. And that was so great to see everybody come together as a community and help make this project possible. And then on the 10th, we had Katie's Crops come with a few of their kids. And Katie's Crops is a nonprofit organization that does a lot of like educational outreach to children. And they also have a lot of kids that have grown up gardening. And so they were so knowledgeable. They planted over 155 plants, and they honestly already knew like about the sulfur and the compost amendments as well. And that was really cool to see. And then another thing that I wanted to make sure that the pollinator garden had was some of the features that would make it a pollinator habitat like certified. And so whenever I was Googling, it said having food such as nectar plants and host plants is very important to making this a habitat for pollinators. And so we had that covered with the milkweed and the partridge pea. And then this is a little picture to the right of a watering dish that I got because I heard that water is also very essential for these pollinators so they can hop from flower to flower and then get a little drink as well. And then some cover, the pine straw covers that. And then we also have some mature trees, which are some magnolias in the back as well. And then we have host plants, which are places that they can raise their young. And then some sustainable practices that we've engaged in that help make it a pollinator habitat are no use of pesticides or herbicides, removal of invasive species such as Chinese tallows, because we have had a few of those saplings growing in the garden, and also the use of drip irrigation for that water conservation. And then here are pictures of what is blooming in real time. We have the dill, the starry rosin weed, the butterfly milkweed, which just started blooming a few days ago. Very pretty. Cutleaf coneflower, golden canna lily. We have the scarlet sage, which is not doing as well as I hoped. And I think it's probably because it's so hot, but some of them have literally like roasted off their stems. And then we have the mountain mint, the coreopsis, the frost aster, the stokes aster, and the blue mist flower. And so these, and also with the blue mist flower, another thing that I thought was really interesting was that those aren't really supposed to bloom until like fall or like later summer. So I'm wondering if maybe it's starting to bloom earlier because of the climate and it's, I feel like, unreasonably hot than usual. So I don't know if that has anything to do with some of the like staggered bloom times. But these are currently what's blooming right now. And then here are some pollinators that I took pictures of on some of the flowers. The top left corner, this is the starry rosin weed. The bees absolutely love it. They also love the stokes aster. And then we've got a wasp on one of the cutleaf coneflowers. And then we have a pearl crescent butterfly on the starry rosin weed. And then a fiery skipper on the stokes aster. We're hoping to see some Gulf fritillaries, monarchs, painted ladies, bumblebees, and hummingbirds. And then next is the volunteer program that I've been working on. And so right now we are wanting to expand the volunteer program, but currently we are just every second Tuesday of the month. And so this program would consist of just routine maintenance such as weeding, pruning, deadheading, and then occasional planting when needed. But I want to wait probably to the fall to replant since it's so hot right now. And the goals of this program are to support long-term care and maintenance of the pollinator garden, to promote hands-on environmental stewardship and community building, and to also educate the community about the conservation and importance of these native species. And that is all I have. Thank you all so much. I have my email listed here. If anybody is interested in contacting me about volunteering, it would be so very appreciated. We are trying to grow that volunteer program, and we might end up making it more frequent than just one day a month since the weeds are getting a little bit out of hand. But anyway, so that's all I have for y'all. I can turn it over to John.
Before I get started, does anybody have any questions
Yes.
as a result of Sarah's presentation? Anything you want to explore a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. If anybody has any questions, feel free.
Sir, I was just curious, 'cause I guess I could see a little bit from your pictures. The plants that you started with, they are already pretty well established plants, were they? You didn't start from just any little tiny seedlings or anything like that, did you?
So actually a lot of the plants did start as the plugs. So we got a lot of plugs, and now those plugs grew probably in about a month that they looked pretty established. So half of the plant list we got as plugs from Charlene, And then the other half we got as established plants from roots and shoots. So like the starry rosin weed came to us established, but the mountain mint came to us as little plugs, and it's grown probably about this tall in a few months. So it's doing pretty well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
There's one question in the chat. I'll just say,
Yes.
do deer present a problem? And then my question is, what kind of signage do you have? I see that you have some.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for the deer question, we haven't noticed any deer presenting any problems. I haven't noticed any plants that look like they've been munched on, which is good. A lot of them are also deer resistant. So I know like the rosemary is pretty deer tolerant. I was a little worried about the herbs attracting deer, but so far I think it's done the opposite, which is fantastic. And as for the signage, we have a pollinator sign that I don't know if there's a really good picture of it. You might have to zoom in a little bit, but it is, it just has like a picture of like a bee and a butterfly on it. And then it gives some information on the importance of native plants and how they benefit the environments.
And a little bit of that deer issue, we've got 3 different parks, and the deer population varies dramatically. At the Pine Trace Park, we've got about 38 deer, and we've got to think a lot about what you're describing versus Ashley River. There's a few deer, but nothing like we have at Pine Trace.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think I see another question in the chat. Okay, so will you have to continue with the soil amendment, or was just composting the planting and planting hole do the trick? So that's a really good question. Clemson Extension did recommend that we do the soil amendments about, I would say, maybe once every few months. Now they didn't say they thought it was super detrimental to do it once every several months, but we probably will continue periodically treating that area with compost and sulfur. I do want to do another soil test soon just to kind of see where we stand and how those amendments have lasted us. But so far, the plants have been doing pretty well. So I think if I do notice that they're not doing as well as I'd hope, I probably would start with the amendments again and then definitely get a soil test in there to see if we need to adjust anything else.
Go on the line.
And then do we have any other questions? If not, I can pass it on to John.
What, my presentation?
Okay. Yeah, let me share. All right, I'm gonna share John's presentation.
And while we're waiting, I did put it in my bio. I've spent about 6 years at Middleton Place as a historian. So part of what I'll be sharing with you is a lot of the historical, ecological development that this region has gone through, which dramatically has impacted the ecology that we have today.
All right.
So we're going to talk about the original habitat. I'm going to go back probably about 300 years. A little bit of an overview on how human activity has changed the original habitat. The initiatives that we have at the park to try and restore the original habitat, focusing primarily on plants as well as some of the water habitat, and how we're trying to engage the public. And the goal here of the public is that they enjoy and value the habitat. And we're really trying to encourage the public to replicate what we're doing in their home gardens and in their home communities. And people find this, they're motivated when we're done talking to them. Just give you a little bit of insight on one of our goals here at the park. So we'll go to the next slide. So when you go back historically, this region was 90 million acres of longleaf pine. And the impact of not only the Native Americans, which actually was not destructive, but the white settlers, was to reduce those forests to 3 million acres. So locally, the best longleaf pine forest is the Francis Marion Forest. If you ever want to go see what this area looked like 300 years ago, that's where you would go. But when you get into the evolution of this forest where our parks are today, it's been dramatically impacted by human economic activities. This just shows you one example of it. These are the rice fields. And when the plantations created these rice fields, they literally re-engineered the earth. And to give you a sense of this, the impact of this change, They believe that the land clearing for the rice fields, they moved as much earth, twice as much earth as they moved to build the Panama Canal. Before the rice industry, we had the naval industry where they were taking down the big trees primarily for ships and the pine trees to basically put them in kilns to generate naphtha, pitch, products for the naval industry. So by the time this era ended, they literally leveled the earth. And just to make it even more challenging for the ecology, after the Civil War, this area was the world's largest exporter of fertilizer. Taking the phosphate out of the ground, they got to dig 8 feet down to get at the rocks that have the phosphate. So this area, after the end of the phosphate industry, now getting around 1900, 1910, the land is level. And what happens as the last major ecological industry is we get all of these companies that are planting the loblolly pine for the purposes of growing pines for wood and paper. So we've literally re-engineered the earth. So what we have now in our parks is secondary growth. It's secondary growth where the prime trees now are loblolly pines and an incredible amount of invasive species and non-native species that primarily came off of the gardens. You know, Middleton Place gardens, people's gardens in their backyard. The species that we plant, people didn't understand with this land that's totally open now, the impact of those species now settling in a secondary growth. So our forest is about 125 years old. So one of my goals is to help people understand why we are where we are, and then talk about what we can do and what we now can see in this secondary forest, which is where our parks are. So, and this is the balancing act that we have at the parks. It's a creative balance between what the public's looking for. And these parks, by the way, were all planned to have residential communities. The county bought them up to protect them, which is fantastic. But the public does want to have a certain amount of entertainment, whether it's just golf courses, you know, the kids' playgrounds, walking trails, those kinds of things. So we're continuously trying to find a balance of protecting the ecology and ensuring that the public can enjoy these wonderful spaces. And that my personal goal is to do these nature walks to help them understand the ecology and hopefully spread their motivation to replicate it in their backyards. This is one example. I do nature walks every week, and I get a whole bunch of, I'd say 50% of the kids coming out are children. So a lot of education for the little kids. And by the way, they lead my walks. I'll have all kinds of slides showing them what we'll look for, and then they lead it. They're scientists, they're explorers. It's really fun. The parents love it. So what you see here is a ditch, which is totally non-value. It's always underwater. And we're working with the Clemson Extension to create a wetland garden here. So we got a bunch of children. We work with Clemson to dig holes in that stretch that you see that looks like mud. So there we dug 18-inch holes, and then we measured the drain rate over 3 days so that Clemson could recommend the plants that we will plant with the kids in September. So they just have a hoot doing this stuff. And that's a major goal with the public. It's one thing to walk on a trail and see stuff. It's another thing to understand what is the world around you and how you can contribute to protecting the ecology. And those were the hardest holes I've ever dug. That clay here is like rock. Okay. Part of what we've done in terms of our park mandate is we inherited these bodies of water, they're big ponds, and we're trying to restore them to a normal, healthy, balanced habitat. They've been dramatically neglected. In South Carolina DNR, they told us the ponds in South Carolina, they're all the same, they're neglected. So you got a whole whack of wide-mouthed bass that are feeding on themselves, and there's no fish balance in the ponds. We were the same. So they came out, they did a test. The boat you see has these wires on it where they're shocking the fish. And when we opened the park, we found 56 wide-mouthed bass, 5 sunfish, and 1 brill. So the bass are eating themselves, and our average bass size was about a foot. So what we've done is last fall they put in 2,400 brill. So we're now getting a balance of fish population. So the bass are eating the brill rather than each other. They're cannibalizing each other. So in a year, we've gone from bass that are about a foot long to about 2.5 feet long. They're decent sized. And this spring, we're loading another 1,200 of sunfish. And the sunfish roll is they're bottom feeders. So they're eating the snails, which have the parasites that kill the fish. So our goal this fall, they're going to do another test, is we want to have 10 brill for 1 bass, and the ratio to brill and sunfish is 3 brill to 1 sunfish. And if we can achieve that balance, we've succeeded in having a healthy, naturally balanced body of water. So as we're working again with the public, we're educating them on what does it mean to have a healthy pond. You can see on the edges of the pond, all of the wildlife growing on the edges. We don't cut that down because it provides us with incredible biodiversity for butterflies, bees. They create a barrier to protect the brill and the fish. And they also serve a purpose of, we have grass on the outer edges of that barrier. The fertilizer actually doesn't get into the pond. The root system of that barrier is very deep, and they actually prevent that runoff from getting in the lake. And they actually will eliminate a lot of the fertilizer toxins. So we've consciously preserved a barrier around these bodies of water for educational purposes and also for ecological purposes. We do nature walks, and they're just a hoot. We have no idea who's going to show up. It could be 5 people. I've had 30 people show up. It's adults, it's children. They absolutely love going to the forest, and we'll do lichen studies. We'll get into mushroom studies. We'll start studying the bark of trees, the vines on the trees, the bugs and the birds. So depending on the time of year, we vary it. And again, with the children, what I'll do is I'll give them a bunch of slides showing them what to look for. And I make it real clear, they're leading the walk, not me. They're explorers, and they really explore. And through that type of educational experience, they're now becoming naturalists. So it's really cool watching. The parents love it. And if I get a lot of adults, I will fine tune the presentation to the demographics of the group. At Ashley River, these are examples of how we've been replanting some of our legacy dominant species. So these are longleaf pines. So I'll go through the story looking at the actual trees. We've also got some other trees, the bald cypress. Pull the next slide. Yeah. So again, we have planted trees in front of our building and in front of the entrances to the trails that are actually used to introduce the folks to the legacy ecology that they're experiencing. So I can get into the whole history that we've shared with you a little bit today. And it is an adventure. These are examples of the mushroom studies we were doing. We have some of the coolest mushrooms you'll ever see. And we get into lichens, we get into the bugs, the rotten trees, you name it. We're out there just having fun. And you never know what you're going to find. We did not know we had bobcats in Ashley River. We have bobcats here. Go figure. And we find eggs. We have owls. We've got otters in the other part. And this is an example of a green snake that we found with a bunch of kids, and he had just had dinner. You see that big bulge? And they all went, ooh. But again, we're just trying to help people learn and love nature, right? And we're doing things. We're building bat boxes. We've got all kinds of initiatives. We're working with the schools. We're going to try and see if we can get them to help us build bluebird boxes. So we're really engaging the public here. And that's just an example. We're trying to partner with the next generation. We've got the Scouts helping us. We got the high schools pitching in on the trails, the elementary schools coming in for classes, university kids doing extension studies, that kind of thing. So it's a real setting where we're trying to find that engagement with the community. So our love of ecology, we cascade and engage the population around us to make them part of our ecological journey. So it's kind of fun. We have a good time here. Other things we do, little things, but they're important. We have trails. We have 5 miles of trails at the Pine Trace example. And what we do on those trails is we do not clean them clear. We leave the leaves on them. We'll leave the spines on them. It's a way of protecting the trails. It's also a conversation with the public. There's a good way and a bad way to manage nature. So we try and protect nature by not over-clearing trails. We work with Clemson on our pond ecology. They're helping us with our wetland studies. South Carolina DNR is going to help us to work on our pond ecology. So we've got some pretty good activities here to try and make this park a part of a very, very healthy ecological community. That's kind of it.
That's all we got.
Yeah. Any questions? Anything people want to dig in on a little bit?
John, I kind of missed, why was it you were shocking those fish in the pond? Was that to see what was in there?
We were shocking them. We actually went through 2 studies. The first study was to find out initially what our fish population was. So so that boat went around the whole pond, and that's where they shocked fish, and we found out we got 56 wide-mouthed bass and 1 brill and 5 sunfish. So no wonder the brill are cannibalizing each other. They have no food. So that's when we stocked the pond with that 2,400 brill. In the fall, we went through and shocked it again. So we confirmed that the bass were no longer eating each other. They're eating the brill. The bass size tripled in size in a matter of months. And we actually removed the large bass. We hauled out about 25 of them because they're feeding and overeating the brill. The population wasn't high enough. And we're going to do it again in the spring to see, are we getting that right balance of 10-1? And that's when we're going to put in the sunfish to have that last population that we're trying to create the ideal balance of the pond.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then it looks like we've got one question. How wide is the buffer area around the pond?
This is a learning experience. The ideal buffer is about 10 to 15 feet. And when you have a young new park, you need to make sure that your team that does the maintenance around the property are on the same page as the ecologist. So we had a little bit of a snafu where our maintenance guys, just on one part of the pond, were trying to take out weeds we asked them to get rid of, invasive weeds, and unfortunately they whacked everything. 2/3 of the pond has about 15 feet and 1/3 is about 3 feet, but the goal is 15 feet. So it's deep enough to filter the water, and it's deep enough to protect the barrier on the edge of the pond so it doesn't erode. Yeah.
Thank you. If anybody else has any questions, you're welcome to unmute.
Oh,
And
We've
well, go ahead.
got a question here. We're both employed. We're both employed. Yep.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Not so much a question, Nikki, but just some comments. As most of you probably know, we've recently moved into Dorchester County, and Ashley River Park is minutes away from where I live now. So I did have the pleasure of joining John on one of his walks. He was unfortunate enough to have me as the only person at the end of the walk. So few of the others that had joined us early on went to do some other stuff, but John is just a wealth of information, and the park is absolutely stunning. It's a wonderful park, and when I heard about what Sarah had been doing there, from her parents by coincidence, I felt as an organization we would be doing really well. I hope to provide a lot of volunteers for them at this park. So, that was kind of our goal this evening, was to give you a little bit of an education, but also to whip up some enthusiasm to get some volunteers out there helping. But thank you to both of you. I think you're doing a phenomenal job in a beautiful park.
With you, if you've got some folks that have some real niche areas of expertise, we would love to have them join us, and we'd organize a workshop. Somebody's into butterflies or lichen or whatever, birds, you name it. If some folks want to come out here and do some workshops, we're game for it.
Absolutely. And I've also been considering seeing if maybe there's any spots here that would be good for a rain garden. So I don't know if that could be something that you would be interested in helping me figure out and planning that. But I'm hoping in the future we can start planting a rain garden as well.
I think we have experts in just about every one of those fields. And
Oh, that's what I'm figuring. We
Paul
can have some real fun together,
yeah, it was a really good day that I spent there. So thanks, John.
That's great.
Thank
How
you. Been a good day.
Thank you both so much. Sarah, I shared your email in the chat as well, so people can hold on to that. So if they're interested in volunteering, they should, someone just said if we can just make it rain, yes, for the rain garden, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So they can reach out to you to volunteer
Yes.
in capacity, especially with the native plants. I'm remiss, and I'm sorry I didn't look before. I should have. On your website, does it list John, your walks and how people can join you, and is that all on Dorchester County Parks website?
Dorchester County Park website, but just so you know, on July the 18th to August the 3rd, I'm going up to hang out with my family that live in the Great Lakes. Sometimes they postpone the walks, and it's awfully hot, so it's not a bad time to postpone them.
Yes, no, yes. Well, we appreciate that, and you certainly deserve to be able to head north to visit family.
you.
So, but yes, I can share that out with everybody too, just so
Yes,
they all know just the different opportunities. So that's fantastic, and we can certainly talk amongst ourselves too, and just see if again, if there are opportunities that people would be interested in offering and things like that, how we can collaborate. So that would be great.
Mhm.
For sure.
Yes,
So.
yes.
Yeah. Any last minute questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody want to jump in before we close? All right. Then thank you so much. Please, everyone, take care of yourself.
Yeah, we had a good time chatting with you. Thank you.
Yes,
Yes, thank you very much for your time and everything you shared with us. Have a wonderful evening.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
as well. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Right.